Greetings in Christ. My name is Bishop Nectarios. I am a bishop of the Orthodox Patriarchate of Nations, and today's question is, do video games make you violent? All right, so let's get started. Now, when we're talking about this, we're talking about the kinds of games that encourage you to do something like become a thief or an assassin or a criminal, and these kinds of video games encourage you to lie, cheat, and steal, to sell drugs, etc., etc. And the question has been asked that as you are doing these things, does it cause you to become violent, or does it incline you towards crime? So, the first thing we need to discuss is that video games often serve as an escape from everything you have to really put up with in life. It can be unpleasant to have to go through life, to have to deal with how people expect things from you or treat you, or frankly don't treat you very well because they expect too much from you or not enough. And so video games give you that opportunity to step out of reality for a while, to vent how you feel and what's been hurting you in a safe place that's not going to affect other people. Oh, before we get too far into this, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. I have a literal list forming here of video topics, all kinds of things. We're going to be discussing, how to deal with criticism, marriage and sexuality, what the deal is with the system, how do you love someone who hates you. I want to focus this particular part of the channel on something that is a common issue that we all, have to deal with, suffer through. So, getting back into it, the idea that you can escape from reality for some time period and go into this fantasy world where you can vent your frustrations and vent the awful things in your heart, and then with the flip of a switch, no damage is done. And in some ways, it's therapeutic. The video games give you a sense of accomplishment. Video games give you a sense of control. Video games give you a sense of empowerment because if your character dies, he's respawned. And that can be very attractive for some people. And there is a tendency to try to take success wherever you can get it, whatever validation you can get, because obviously there's not a line of people out there looking to, beef you up and boost you up. There's a lot more people that'll tear you down than build you up. And we see it a lot when video gamers get together and they start bullying each other and they start talking a lot of crap on each other. In the end, the idea of a video game is a great and sound thing. Studies have been done on this, and they say that it will not make you violent. Now, that's really based on one important critical piece of information. Do you have the ability to separate fantasy from reality? And if you do, then video games have less of a risk than if you're someone who, let's say you're severely mentally ill, and you have a tendency to see it and then want to emulate it, then, which has happened actually. There was a guy that got arrested for emulating Grand Theft Auto, and he went out and stole like 6 cars and parked them in front of his house like an idiot. And he got arrested for all of the cars because they were just sitting there. And, that only feeds the fire. And people who do dumb things like that, what can I tell you? I'm talking about your average red-blooded human being, a person who is mature enough to understand that a video game is a fantasy. It is an opportunity for you to have fun, not it becomes your life. And there are people who live very hard lives and they use video games to leave that life behind for large chunks of time. and they will spend day after day after day grinding on the video game. And that becomes a separate problem because now you're no longer engaging with life. You're no longer attempting to overcome your issues or, adapt to your issues or develop a skill to make your issues less of a problem. Now, what's going on is you've decided to just do away with life and all of the ickiness that goes with it by, delving into a video game. When I grew up, I was criticized for playing video games because my family made the point, well, you're never going to make any money playing video games. Oops. Yeah, you will. And if you get professional, you make good money playing video games. And there are people who get into the design aspect of video games, and there are people who learn to code and whatnot and write programs and software. Actually, there's a lot of room for people that want to dive into video games as a career, which actually seems a lot better than trying to just dive into a video game that someone else has created, but you take your comfort where you can find it. Now, as for the act of engaging in something violent or something where you're stealing, now that has to be a judgment call on your part. If you're following Christ, you're not going to want to hurt people. You're not going to want to steal from people. And you have to ask yourself, if I believe in Christ as deeply as I do, and I'm not in a position where stealing is a matter of life and death, which is still not acceptable, but the society is far more willing to accept someone who steals to live, when in reality what we should be doing is we should be boosting these people up. We should be raising these people up as opposed to simply saying, well, the guy's a thief because he's broke. Well, what are we going to do about that? What if we removed the situations or helped him find tools and equipment and resources? And there are a lot of people that do that, don't get me wrong. But when you play a game and you're stealing things and killing characters on the game and doing all these various activities, does it give you any form of peace? Does it pull you away from God? Does it pull you into a darker place? And if it does, then maybe we need to talk a little bit about what type of games you're playing. Because if your goal is to follow God, and that's part of who you are as a human being, and you decide that you want to also have video games as a hobby, then the video games have to be taken with a grain of salt. Because the video game has a component. It's a place in your life, but it's not the whole of your life. It is just a single part of your life. It serves a very limited function. You're a mature adult or young man or woman, and you can distinguish fantasy from reality. Then the video game is just there to help you blow off some steam. It's no different than a workout or people who write poems or people who, really insert here. There are guys that go fishing, they're hunting to blow off steam. So you have to take a middle of the road approach with video games. They can't dominate your life. And if you begin to feel like the video games are getting in the way of you living your best life, then they need to be scaled back or eliminated. And that can be very difficult because video games are almost addictive, even though I don't want to use that term addictive because I haven't seen conclusive evidence on whether or not a video game is actually addictive. It becomes emotionally addictive. Because, as I said, it's a place where you can go to escape the hell that you're living in your life. Excuse me. I got some phlegm in my throat. So you have to take the middle of the road approach. Video games by themselves are not going to make you violent unless you're already violent, and then who you are starts to become expressed a bit more in video games. If you're the kind of guy that naturally is kind of a bully, and you play a game where maybe you're a thief or an assassin or you're a soldier, you start to see a much more aggressive style of play. Now, for those people who claim that when you're playing these video games and you engage in these actions like stealing or killing or whatever, that you're committing the sin because in essence, your decision is what makes half of what makes it a sin. The other half is the actual commission of the act. And through your thumbs and your brain, you're committing the act in the video gaming world. Now, there's some problems with that theory because, as I said, it's a fantasy. It is a place for people to go and blow off steam. Um, but at the same time, you're drawn to what resonates with you the most. If you find that you're naturally a very violent person and that's a part of what stresses you out in life, then my guess is it's going to reflect that in the video gaming that you engage in. However, does that decrease your stress or does that merely carry the problems that you're facing in your life, your real life, and bring it with you into the activity that's supposed to separate you from the bad things in your life? Um, by itself, a video game is a toy, it's a tool. It's a way for you to escape, to blow off some steam. And there is some positive benefits to games, hand-to-eye coordination. There is a community aspect that goes into video games. As a matter of fact, there's an entire culture that's developed around it. Not just the professional video game players, but the people who play video games, and they're professionals and they stream it for other people to watch, the comments, and, there's literally an entire culture that surrounds this. And this culture means a lot to people. So you can't just dismiss it out of hand. I would never let little Johnny play this game or that game because of this or that or the other thing. You have to ask yourself, what are you willing to accept as a parent? And if you're an adult, you have to ask yourself, as I said, can I, and be honest, this is in the quiet of your own heart, can I find a game that's going to make me feel good? Can I myself keep from getting drawn closer to the negative aspects of who I am by playing this game? When I'm playing the game, do I become a bully? When I'm playing this game, am I bullied by other people? And is that actually contributing to a negative thing in my life? And that sounds ridiculous, but there are a lot of stories of cyberbullying among teenagers that drive them to suicide. And does anyone want any more dead kids in the community? I mean, how many more kids do we have to bury before we say the cyberbullying has to be dealt with? You know, it's a difficult thing to discuss because, as I said, video games mean a lot of things to a lot of people. There are professional aspects of it. There are professional competition aspects of it. There are people who devote large parts of their time to training to participate in these tournaments because there are cash prizes. And there are people who develop internet famous personas based on, their ability to enter into competitions and compete and gain sponsorships. And that's a completely different thing than if your goal is to, say, become an architect or a plumber or an electrician, and instead of going out and enrolling in school or lining up an apprenticeship, you're playing video games because the stress of trying to line these things up has now made it so that you're being self-destructive. So by itself, a video game is not going to make you violent. It's not going to turn you into a thief. Everything has a place in your life to a degree. Well, I should say most things have a place in your life to a degree. There are some things that are so absolutely destructive that bringing them into your life at all is toxic. But I'm speaking about things like video games. I'm speaking about things like, martial arts. I'm speaking about things like bowling and the hobbies and the ways that we go about bettering ourselves or developing ourselves in some manner. The key is not to allow these things to take over your life to the point where you don't do anything but. there are a lot of opportunities for you as a human being to develop new skills, new relationships, whether those are friends or lovers. This is your opportunity. This is your life. And, it's good to set some time to decompress and get rid of the stress, because if you don't, you're going to become just a wound up ball of stress that's making everyone else around them miserable. Now, a quick caveat: I am a video game player. I am a huge fan of the games in the Fallout and the Skyrim series and the Mass Effect series. I do not own those copyrights or trademarks, and they're not paying me to talk about them. I'm just a huge fan of the series. I appreciate the content and the skill that went into creating them. I'm a big fan of open world exploration games. Um, and I've been playing video games most of my life. Now, as a bishop, I still play video games, but I have a lot of things that I'm trying to accomplish and I'm trying to do. So, I usually end up playing video games later at night, and I tend to stick with characters that don't enhance the natural dark side that just about everybody has. That's how I really address things. I don't want to run a character that's stealing things and killing people for no reason. Um, but there are people that don't have an issue with that because, as they said, it's a fantasy situation. It's not a problem for them. And playing those characters doesn't encourage people to, think and do something that's unwise or unhealthy or unsafe. I'm simply at the point where the video games are still a part in my life, but they're far less important than they used to be. And I'm starting to look at things like my YouTube channel. For example, I went out today and I got a new microphone for my channel. I was really wanting one of these lapel microphones because I keep wanting to develop my channel and learn new skills and techniques to improve it. I want to learn how to put up, a green screen, and I want to learn how to put up the video editing in the background so there's a more pleasant background for you to look at while I yak at you. And, I have to take these kinds of things. I have to look at online classes, particularly free ones, because, champagne tastes on a beer budget. But one thing at a time, I'm slowly starting to develop new skills for this channel. I'm starting to look at sub-channels related to my interest in martial arts. And all in all, I think that what we need to do is take a step back when it comes to things like this, because there's the tendency to dismiss it out of hand from the traditionalists' perspective, because they say it's a distraction from God. But it's a thought put out there by most Christians that the devil doesn't create, he destroys. That everything that we have is given to us by God. Now, there are people that are going to disagree with that, and there are going to be people who agree with that, and there are going to be people who feel like the devil can also create and destroy. My personal feeling is that I've never seen evil do the work of good. Not even to try to convince people that it's good, because evil doesn't worry about whether it's good or not. My opinion is the video game is a tool, it's a toy, and as long as it has a proper place in your life, as long as it is respected within the boundaries of what it's designed to do, and as long as you don't mix up fantasy with reality, I don't think there's any real risk. As I said, it cannot be the whole of your life, and it cannot cause you to stop engaging with life, period. It cannot stop you from developing who you are as a human being. If you want to have something like, for me, it's the YouTube channel, you have a right and a responsibility to develop those skills, to learn those techniques, to, seek out the apprenticeships and the education that you want, and to treat video games as a pleasant experience, but not the whole of your life. So that's it for today. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, and I'll expand upon them. Now, as always, God loves you, And I love you. Take care. God bless. Peace.